Thank you, Xavier, and hello, everybody. I will share the screen. I will try to do that. Yes, it's working. Marvelous. And maybe just to talk the story, because I think it's a little bit funny. And I think also that all the people are not maybe all French speaking. And so that there are some jokes between us with this book. The idea of this book was started by a conversation with Xavier. Everybody knows very well Xavier. He's one of the most famous dealers in the world with a really precise idea about what to do and what he wants to do. And he will never say what he wants to do, but he will do what he has to do, just that you understand what you want, that is from you. And I remember during a lunch, we were talking about Magritte, and I say to Xavier that there is something really strange with Magritte. If you just take a comparison with some other big masters from the 20s and other surrealists, by example, even Salvador Dali, there is no filiation of Salvador Dali. It's kind of system, and it was exhausted by the artist himself. You could find the same thing with a lot of names, and it's not true for Magritte, because there are a lot of artists interested, involved with the works of Magritte. And Xavier said to me, "Oh, well, you get visit from some artists to see the works of Magritte." I say yes, and some very wrong coming from the world, and they want to see special things of Magritte, and especially now, since I would say the beginning of the 2000s, especially the works of Magritte of the Vache period. And during the discussion with Xavier, I say, well, we will have a series of works of Magritte, leaving the museum to go to the SF MoMA for the big exhibition about Magritte at the SF MoMA. So it will be more or less an empty museum, and we have the habit to put confrontation with Miro, Dali, and others. And Xavier said, "Michel, is it not interesting also to show some young artists in the museum?" And he say, by example, there is someone really involved with the works of Magritte, it's Nicolas Party. So you have to know that in French, Nicolas Party is Nicolas gone. And Nicolas gone, it's really funny for the show of Magritte with the works of Magritte gone. So we had a meeting with Nicolas. He comes to the museum, he went to the museum, and we just had a visit of the museum, and I say, just look, on this place, we could have example of this. I don't know, there is someone putting drawings on.
That's not me.
That's very strange, Nicolas, it's you.
No.
And you see, by example, on this place, I say to Nicolas, just look, on this place, there is an empty place. And Nicolas was just taking notes about that. And that's the starting point of the exhibition. He was bringing his own production inside the museum, but in some case, you have a real dialogue on place. By example, this is typical of the game. We play together, and I say to him, you just have this place, not on the left side, not on the right side. You are with Magritte, and I can do nothing for you. What's that? Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the word there? Because for me, my screen, yes, it's there.
Yeah, no, we see it. Yeah.
And I say him, it's really complicated. You just have this place and no other place. It's really impossible to move the works, because we are in the Magritte Museum. It's like an icon, and we are really careful with all the works. And I would say that I was very surprised. For me, it was a little bit strange. Such a nice guy, a young guy, who is coming inside the Magritte Museum. I say, it's crazy. It's crazy to come and to put his own words, but simply. It was nothing to do with a pretentious position of a young artist in regard of a heritage. No, it was natural. It was like a play. And we start with a joke between French and Magritte. Magritte Party. Magritte is gone. And if Magritte is gone, Nicolas is coming. And it was really funny to see this. And I just want to ask to Nicolas, no, we have, by example, this work to put together. what's the meaning for you? It was 2 years ago, and what's the meaning for you, this exhibition, this dialogue with Magritte? What does it mean for you now?
Well, hello everybody. Thanks everybody to be here, and thanks to Michel to take the time to have this great conversation, and again for this amazing invitation that was 2 years ago now. And I mean, it was like, as I think as you're describing it very well, it was like I like the fact that the invitation itself was making the heaviness maybe of the, you know, oh, you're going to show you work next to a master of history of art, so it can be very stressful or heavy. But it was more like, oh, we actually have empty spots and we're trying to fill them in. So I was like feeling a bit less pressure. It was like, oh, can you fill those spots? And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I as you described, I took it like as a little game, and also with you and the very kind of great Brussels sense of humor. I was just trying to be very playful with the exercise and not trying to be too serious and being like, okay, I need to compare myself with you know, I've been saying that, like, you that's the start. You never want to compare yourself to a master, because you obviously you're going to lose in the comparison. So the main thing for me was to be very playful and to really take the exercise in a very literal way. And in some of the painting that went to San Francisco, I kind of did a version the portrait with the two if you kind of show the portrait with the two guy with the hats, that the Dupont that was like, you know, kind of a versions of the painting that left. Which one is this? It's the thing is,
Do you have the page?
yeah, I'm gonna find it right now. Yeah, this guy.
Ah, yeah.
So this one was kind of, I mean, basically like almost all the paintings are made for the show. And some of them, typically this one was made in relation to the painting name was, actually taken on my, it was, what is that? That was the name of the painting was La Cinquième Saison, 1943. Could show my screen, but it's like,
Fifth season, yeah.
Yeah, see like here as the, I got like, basically I got that little PDF when I did the show with, oh, that's all the thing that is going. So you need to replace those. And that's, you know, of course there was some wiggle room there, but that's kind of what I started to do. And yeah, for this one, I added like a few other jokes about Brussels. And obviously that's a reference and a joke about the famous Dupont from maybe the other most famous person from Brussels, Hergé. I guess they're probably the two most famous Brussels artists, right? Hergé and Magritte, I will imagine. More than James Ensor, I would say. Well, also James is not really like from Brussels, but so yeah, that was kind of yeah, that was the thing.
And now, because we are 2 years later, what does it mean now for you? There is something, is it still a dialogue with Magritte, or it was just an opportunity at this time, or do you are still looking for some surrealist aspect of his works? What does it mean to Magritte for you personally?
I mean, it means I think for a lot of people like that do figurative arts, especially on an expressionist way, Magritte is for sure like a very important. Let's say like I'm a figurative painter, and in this a lot of different kind of drawers and labels of figurative painting, there's like some that are like way less kind of expressive, you know, like so. And obviously Magritte is probably like one of the least expressive kind of 20th century kind of figurative artist. It's a very like you know, except for the Période Vache obviously, but it's trying to reduce, you know, and he was known to be like, well, the painting itself, that it was not very interested in that. And so that there's this way, this part of being this side of being a figurative artist that I'm very interested in. And also I think like I discovered the Magritte in '87 when I was 7 years old, when there was a show at the Fondation de l'Hermitage in my hometown in Lausanne, and my parents had a friend that worked in the museum, so I spent a lot of time that time at that show when I was 7 years old, and my mom bought the poster. She put it in the, I think it was the living room or the kitchen, and so I grew up with a poster of Magritte for quite a long time, and I think for children it's also like, I think it's a very immediate kind of reaction to those images, and so I think to this day, like I still, I think, look quite a lot at the Magritte like strategies that he's been using. It kind of, he really mastered how to kind of like describe, you know, like an object and like really reduce an image to very like just like few little elements into one kind of very powerful image. Like the simplicity of his language is for me like still extremely inspiring. And so yeah, I do like look. I know obviously this experience was for me like an incredible way to get deeper with his work. Going back there, like installing the show, going like a lot of time. I was living there at the time, so I was also going there, you know, on a very regular basis. And yeah, so that's it's still a very big inspiration for sure.
Let's come back to your own works now. Between you and Magritte, there are really substantial differences. Is the sense of painting. Could you explain a little bit more what's for you the fact? I say painting, but I would say first drawing for you. Could you drawing or painting first?
Well, the because I've been using soft pastel in the last 5 years to do most of my work, and so soft pastel is kind of in between, because it was always like kind of stuck between drawing and painting, because it was historically used as a drawing mark making tool as a preparation for studies in the Renaissance, and then you can evolve to get to a peak in the 18th century when it started to be like seen as more painting material. But that was probably only that during that century that there was a golden age of pastel seen as painting. But then I think like it became again more like sketches and studies for a lot of artists, because it was very quick and immediate. And then there's like some different periods where pastel comes back a little bit. And in Belgium, like from symbolists like Spielart or the Groupe de Nantes, like they used like a bit of pastel, not Magritte, but and so yeah, I think like I'm definitely the pastel has like something with the mark that is much more like a drawing type kind of, and the layering and the expression of the expression that you can have with a brush, with the liquidity of the material, is gone with pastel, and that is a bit closer to like a pencil, I guess. So you kind of have the line is more, I guess, more intuitive than to do. You can really do a big mess, but you can too. So, I mean, it's a really fantastic medium to use, because it's kind of in between, and it's very unique. It's because it's definitely not like a pencil, but it's definitely not a brush. Also, you use your hand and your finger most of the time, so you directly like kind of in relation with the medium. I don't use glove, which is probably not a good idea, but like, so you're always like full of pigments, and it's a very, very sensual material, and I really like.
For Edouard Degas, the pastel was the dust light, the kind of dust from the light. Could you explain what's this relationship with the light? Because in the Magritte Museum, it's really dark, and something was really special. It was the reaction of your drawings with the light in his kind of black box. And light is something really substantial for you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that the Magritte Museum is such a particular environment, because it's a black museum. Yeah, everything is very dark, and all the images are like pop. It's like it's a really rare thing that you usually come. And also, like, I almost always repaint the wall, because I really have kind of almost an allergic reaction to white walls. I really think they're very often very terrible for other colors. Like white is a color that doesn't really go well with other colors, and it's kind of take over like way too much of the other colors. And so like there was kind of the opposite. It was like, oh, you need to show your work on those black wall. But it was great, because it's like they really pop in a very different way. But and I did a bunch of the pastels kind of related to also that particular aspect of the museum. I mean, the light in my actual work is it's kind of guess a specific way of treating light is basically like treating light as a way of creating a volume, but absolutely not coming from how the lights actually work in reality, how as we see it in the real world. It's a little bit more like as a 3D software will work a little bit. It's like reducing as much as you can what light does to create a volume, and not having any kind of what in the real world like is extremely complex, how it hits and rebounds and makes shades. In my work, I'm really doing an extremely reduced way to just like basically gimmicking volumes, and typically the shadows in a lot of the works are either not existent or just totally like, I usually do a shadows 45 degrees on one angle when I do a pot or fruits. And that's just like how the human eye recognize it as like, oh, that's what, you know, that's the most, it's a bit like how the perspective during the Renaissance was invented, was a very simplified in a way, but the human eye said like, okay, that's like perspective, that's like it works. If we do those like very long line, we see like a volume. And it's kind of the same if you put an object and you do you do like a cylinders, and if you use from dark to light, the human eye recognize it as a volume. But in reality, that never happens. It's like, it's, you know, a 3D volume. It's so like the little spheres that you can see like in those two pictures is like exactly that. You have like you see it as a sphere, but because I just created from the dark to the light with this little shade, the little like shadows on top of the head, and we see it, oh, that's the volume. And but in reality, that will be actually fairly complicated to reproduce that with a camera and with a real object. It's like totally wrong. Like similar here, the sun is obviously on the back of the moon, so the shadows should be coming in front, not on that direction. That's also totally wrong. And but somehow, and there's something interesting with Magritte, you don't really, it doesn't bother you at all. You're like, oh, I guess that's the shadows, because I guess we know it as an image is not reality. And but we recognize the signs. It's like a language, like, and I think, yeah, Magritte is kind of the master of that. Like even if it was like often his starting point was a real object. And I think that's in my work, there's almost never any connection with any reality. And I think in Magritte, there's like a lot of, you know, a lot of things are coming from his house, or some, you know, different aspect of the actually existing objects, which actually, it's funny enough, in the show I did the house that is the real house, because that's the house that I have in Brussels. And yeah, this one. So that's a very rare thing that I did actually, and I kept that pastel for me because I did it for the show in kind of response to this, and because it was, you know, I think I bought the house in, you know, in this almost the same time that we did the show, and there was like a very quite a beautiful anecdote and timing with all that, and with my time in Brussels, and the how I was loving the city and the art world and everything. So I did that work that is almost like an illustration of the house. And but it's totally, I probably will never do anything like that after that. But I mean, I really like it, but it's kind of an hobby in my practice.
And by the way, it's a real house, but it's a pink house, and it's nothing to do with Magritte. It's more the Gouffre de Ninck, and the strange sensation of this house with the light coming from the inside in the landscape. It's a work from the Kohler Müller, not from Brussels, but it's one of the masterpieces of the Belgian symbolist. You say that there is no direct connection with reality, but it's very strange, because works like this one, and it was in situation like this in the show, there is a strong connection with the reality, I guess.
Well, you definitely recognize that as a person. Okay, that's a human, I guess, because you have a nose, two eyes, and a mouth, and you see like the body, and you say, oh, that's not a dog, or that's not abstract, or that's not a chair, that must be a person. Because I use basically but if you do a circle, if you do a much more reduced version of that, a circle with two dots, and you completely say, oh, that's a human face. Obviously, a human face doesn't look, and the human face doesn't look like that at all. And typically with this, so there's absolutely no, it's not based on any photos or any models, or it's based on how the humans have been kind of in a way reducing or stylized, different object that has been drawn in and put in images, and I'm trying to basically like kind of put the cursor in different directions. Typically for this one, it was kind of interesting because I was really trying to create a person that you could have definitely and while I was drawing, I wanted to have the feeling that I'd never really know if it was a woman or a man, and also the age. I was like really trying to make myself like really wonder when I was doing it. And there's a very interesting moment when you do a cartoon, I guess, or like a very simple drawing. If you do like straight lines on the busts and 2 dots, that's a man. And if you do just curve, that's a woman. And then basically there's a moment between the 2 lines and the curve that goes down. If you just put, you just reduce them, there's a moment it's in between. There's like a little more that I was trying to create that. I don't know if it's successful, but I was really trying to kind of create that moment when, and is this, similar with the jaw. Like if you create a cartoon again, if you want to do a man, you're going to do an angular jaw, and if you do a woman, you just cut and that's a convention, because in reality, it's really obviously not that clear. It's not even like proven that the jaws of men are larger than the jaws of women, but we kind of see them like that. And the haircut is another element that's like obviously more women as a cultural kind of habit have longer hair, and so every time you do a longer hair, if I put those, but here the hair, they're exactly kind of in the middle, but if you put slightly longer, every time I do a portrait with hair that are longer, people say, oh, she, and every time I do short hair, they say he, even if the face is exactly the same. And I think it will, if we do an experiment of 50 people, and you like obviously remove the beard, and you do like everybody has this exactly the same haircut, I bet that it will be very difficult to know who is with the man and with the woman. And so that's kind of especially there's different ages and stuff, but so that's like that. I'm trying to play with all those different signs. But again, if this particular image was based on something real, the model or the photo will be a man or a woman probably, and so that will like totally like switch this all like attempts in a different direction. So
but by the way, you're playing with the codification of representation like in the comics, but there is also the sensuality of the flesh in this kind of representation, with the color and the red color, the passionate colors, the red. And it's something really strange too, because if we are back to the show, we could find the same idea with Magritte, because with the transformation of the flesh in the sky is the curve of Magritte, and you have also this reality and this relationship to the sensuality. And is it something really important for you in an image, this relationship with sensuality?
Yes. Yes, because I think like sensuality will be like just the seduction that is in any kind of, in a way, human creation, and the seduction is a way of getting people in. It's basically like pulling someone in your worlds, and then when the person is in, it's really like a relationship between 2 humans. You want to seduce the person with different tricks, and some of the visual animals do that very well. But the first kind of steps is seduction, and then when the person is locked with you, I guess you can start to kind of develop maybe very different interactions. I think in an image, it's surely very important to, as a strategy for sure, to use the let's say sensuality, seduction, with we've been learning for like centuries and millenniums of how to create those elements in an image to basically attract the viewer. It's really like as a human or animals, how they have all those tricks with their like colors, singing, movements to attract their partner to mate. And I think in artwork has to do the same. And then the mating it's a different thing, because you just don't have sex with the painting, but you want to attract the person in the painting, and then whatever is in the painting can basically, whatever is in the painting, you need to be inside the painting. You need to have this relationship. If you don't get the person in, well, you can't obviously you can't even start the process. And I think like and some of the strategies obviously work with what we'll say like it's been like obviously used and very overused, but you know, still I guess humans, it's one of the main attraction that they have is with the bodies and the sexualization of the bodies, and all those curves and all those like lines. It's still something that the human eye is, you know, I guess it's our kind of animal side or like bestial side, but we're still very, very attracted to it and like drawn to those kind of things. So I think artists have been always using those strategies, and especially obviously with this, you know, centuries of male dominated kind of image making, you see obviously a lot of the very basic strategies. Oh, like I'm attracted to women, so basically I'm going to use that in my in my strategy to attract other men to look at the paintings, and we obviously see that in so many paintings. But obviously there's a lot of different, there's the idea of the ugliness or horror or jokes. It's also like, you know, when you seduce someone, humor is also a very important strategy that we can use. So all those kind of aspects again are so important. To you want to get someone inside the painting, and what you want is to keep the person in the painting as long as you can.
When you're talking about attraction, seduction is attraction, and attraction is temptation. Temptation is the apple. We were involved with the human body, but there are a lot of objects in your works, and not only these kind of big fruits. I was really surprised to see how you monumentalize the object, and always with a small detail, bringing something strange inside the representation, like the pickles there.
Apples and pickles.
Apple and pickles, yeah. Could you explain what's the relationship to the object, and maybe also, because especially with this, with the colors, the really sensitive and also decorative way to show the object in magnificence. What's the object for you?
Well, but yeah, that's a good example of on this like kind of simple. That was also like a direct response to the Magritte that is not in the book, with the Magritte painting of the Big Apple. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the apple is it's been for a while now, like the symbol of the attraction from the Eve kind of stories, like, and so it's been used and overused and in so many ways that and there's like different reasons for that, but the like there's obviously like I think pictorially, like you see here there's something very essential with the how there's basically a curve that gets in, and there's the stick that fills in, so you can really have this great kind of curve aspect that is, you know, like close to some parts of the body that are the sexual parts. So like when you do apples or peaches, and it's been like used tons in history of art for that particular reason, because without doing, you know, basically a butt or like a woman spreading their legs or a man, you know, spreading their legs or showing like a different part of the body, like you do that with an apple, so you kind of create a little bit of a moment of attraction, but also a moment of you know, like almost not understanding what's happening. So that's kind of like what I'm using in a very like kind of direct way, and that's that painting. I think here what I did, I just brought the pickles, because the pickles could be in a way the exact opposite of the apple. Like it's really obviously it can look like it's not an attractive vegetables that, and in painting it's usually used as something a little bit silly. Because the shape is like too small to be like a glorious kind of penis representation, and also it's full of little veins and it's green, so you know it looks a bit like it doesn't look like a very glorious kind of a sexualized object. So when you put them together, like you create that like, you know, funny kind of interaction between this apple. I mean, I did the apple green, so the apple looks not that sexy, I guess, but those, and everything is a little bit like kind of greeny and creepy, and but that's kind of the idea, or the different kind of I guess visual strategy that I'm trying to use. But what kind of, I guess what is important is like it's for me, it's like they're never like a shape. That's also maybe what's like I do, I enjoy using the apple because of how it's been used. And I also, if I do a pickle the same way, I will not, I will never, like I heard that a few times, or I do a sun because it's great to have a circle in a landscape. It's a great, you know, like a little geometric shape. So I use it. I will not do that. I will, like, if I do a sun, it's because the sun is something that I want to kind of have a dialogue and a relationship of what is the sun and what it means. Same with the moon, same with the apple, same with the tree, same with the sunset. I'm not using those elements without. So that will be the symbolist kind of aspect of the I guess the practice is I'm not like a formal, I guess, or like.
Yeah. But when you are bringing together two objects together, or two kind of objects together, you're always changing one of the object and to transform the representation. By example, with those two reality, bringing only one reality. And I don't know why, but for me, its vision of a cactus is something like a Western movie with
Yeah, yeah, you said that
on the tree. And that's something really strange because it's always coming. You're bringing objects together, and those objects bringing together are creating a new reality.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also, I think I do that like generally in the work, but for this show, I did it like a lot because I think Magritte is again the master of those, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 combination of things that are, you know, like, oh, that doesn't go with each other. I mean, surrealism is a little bit of, you know, like a very simplified, like, well, I put the 2 objects that don't go together in the same place, either because of size or because of where they belong in the same kind of screen, and that you create this kind of moments. And so I did a lot of that in those particular paintings. And it's but because it's just a strategy that is extremely simple and efficient, and it's very joyful to basically again play with the cursor of what. So you have like for the one before, you have the teapots. So I do like I've been doing pots just by themselves. So what I can just add something else that's gonna basically, you want to create that moment where you intrigued enough to look more for what's going on, but you're also direct enough that you see it straight away, and you don't have to kind of like look for. So it's again, it's about the seduction, and one of the strategy here, like Magritte probably like to create a very clear moment of like, oh, there's those 3 birds, there's a teapot. Obviously, they're not supposed to go together because of the size. So what's the size of the teapot? Is it like very small birds, or is it like a very big pot? And also the pot doesn't look really like a pot, maybe because of or how it is, or in the background, you don't really know if it's inside or outside, and it's maybe starts to become a landscape. And yeah, you create this elements, and then again, you're trying to bring the person in the painting, and then, you know, whatever happened when you in the painting, that's up to that's up to the person. I attempt to, when I go, there's different ways, but I attempt to like the idea of of those characters. And that's again, like in cartoons, it's always been used in a very successful way of like the first Disney, or like, you know, like how, you know, when you can make all those objects just like as human characters, and what they're going to do together. Like if dogs, plants, chairs, and humans, we all have the same ability to dance, speak, and interact with each other, what will happen, and what this chair, what kind of character it is. It's like an old grumpy chair. Is it like a very sexy kind of lamp? And it's been used a lot in cartoons, but that's something that's one of the strategy that I like to bring the person in, I think, because I think it's a very joyful and entertaining one to play with.
And by the way, space is also something really, it seems to be so easy, so simple, but you were talking about the shadow at 45 degrees. We have here.
That's
also
one, there's 2.
And by the way, the teapot is not only on the table, it's also a landscape with the ground and the sky. Yeah. So there are some ambiguity, but you're always using the word strategy. Is the strategy the priority? Are you thinking about the strategy before coming to the objects and the subject of the work? Or is it coming with the works because elements are bringing their own strategy themselves? Or are you putting the strategy at the first front?
No, because I'm really not, I'm very impatient. So so I tend to not do a lot of things that I don't want to do. And most of the things that I want to do is just paint, basically, is to create the images. And I'm trying to cut everything else that I have to do. So basically I will not spend much time like, thinking about strategies of like conceptualizing strategies. I almost never do it. I just like, I draw a lot and I go and I paint and I want to see. And I think that maybe Magritte said that, or like what's, what the painting is saying is what you're seeing. There's nothing. And I think that for most of the visual artists, that's the case. Like what you want to say with the painting is what you see. It's like, so the first, how you deal with it when you're making it, you're making something that you obviously see. And when you think it's successful for whatever place you are, and how you feel, how you approach the image that you're making, you basically you think it's finished and it's right. But the strategy is not put on paper or conceptualized at all. Like it's kind of it's more like when I look at them or look at any other visual things, I can maybe like describe them like in that way, but when I make them, really not. I'm trying to be the one that is surprised by it, basically, while I'm making them. So usually, like, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but usually the way of doing it is during the process of making a painting, you need to be in a place that you think the painting is quite bad, and you kind of almost had to give up on it. And I think that's very, like, almost every painter's kind of describe that moment. So when you're like, okay, it's not working, it's really like a failure. And at that moment, you maybe loosen up and you just start to, like something is happening that you really don't really control. And when it works, you kind of see this like, oh, that's very surprising. I didn't know that could look like that, or could be. And that's the moment that you're chasing like all the time. And I think the greatest artists at Depole, you feel that they've been achieving that almost on a daily basis. Like if you like let's say like a Matisse type of character, like you almost feel like he was surprising himself with the result that I was doing, like so much that it was probably like, I mean, because it's very addictive. It's like almost like winning in a sport or something. When you kind of delocked the problem, it feels like really like winning something. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And the more you have it, the more you feel like this exhalation and this great feeling. And I feel like, I mean, I think that's in a very simple way, like that's what I'm chasing most, because that's basically the joy of you. Because maybe it's also, I heard that Magritte was saying that the actual because I think his process was much more structured. So the actual process of painting for him was probably not very surprising, and I think that it was probably like there was probably a delay between the idea, the sketch, and the final result. Where it gets very surprising when he gets the kick, it was probably like not in the same time than kind of some other painters. But this moment, I think, is the moment that painters or artists in general, I think, are addicted to, and they're trying to have as much as possible because it's the best feeling, better than everything else.
Okay, so people want to see you. So I take off the images, but we were talking about human body. We were talking about the object. Let's talk about the landscape too, because landscape are really important for you too. How could you move from the object, the relationship to the object, to the relationship with the landscape? And what's the landscape for you? Maybe I will just show Xavier. Don't be angry. I will just show one of those landscape because it's really interesting for people to see also the works. That's the works in situation in the exhibition, and in front of a Dominion of Light from Magritte. It's not so easy to be in such a place, and this is a work itself. So what's the landscape for you? What it means, a landscape? Is it a dream? Is it the reality that you're transforming with the color? Is it a kind of a return to the childhood? What's the meaning of the landscape for you?
So I think like how I've been working in those separating the portrait, the still lifes, and the landscape. I mean, so far usually I really separate them like completely. So the landscape, they never have any animals or basically humans in them, or even human constructions. They're just like landscape. And what if I call them landscape is because it's, again, I'm like trying to evoke what we see as a landscape, like what, you know, like if I did some rocks or lately, or caves, or, and it also they also landscapes with, and so, I think it's the idea of the world that we live in, but without anything human touch. So like you remove yourself from it, and everything that you consider as human, even if like the landscape as we know it now, everything is human, because we planted the trees, we cutted the trees, we did everything more or less. We've been changing hills and like, but you know, I think it's, again, it's a conceptual perception. Is like, and we like this. It's kind of this trying to explore this connection that this relationship that we have with what we call nature, or what we call, again, a landscape, what we call like, I think humans have the tendency of feeling they're not parts of this planet. Probably that's probably the one of the cause of some of the problems that the humans are causing. But like you feel like, oh, like, you know, we don't feel like we're part of nature, or we don't feel like we animals. We're like, oh, like these humans. And I think for me, like when I do landscape, I'm trying to explore basically like how we visualize that, how we like explore that kind of world that is always in front of us. And I think like the tree, for example, it's why I've been using the tree the most, is because it's something that you have in every landscapes, obviously. I mean, most of the landscapes, and but also in every cities, and even at homes, plants. And I think it's kind of an object that humans have been looking with a deep fascination and passion to represent that kind of that idea of the this kind of extraordinary kind of constructions, because obviously it's a trees growing in front of you, and it's a really complex kind of architecture, more than smaller plants, or and it's pretty majestic, and it's changing a lot during the year, so you can really see it in our kind of rhythm. Some things change in landscape, but they're much slower. Like everything obviously is moving, but you know, like that's the problem with climate change. You don't see it, so nobody really cares. But like with trees, like you can see, like it just happened here in upstate, like in a matter of like 4 weeks, there's no leaves, and the entire environment is completely different. And of course, we're very used to it. It happens every year. But this transformations, I think, is extremely powerful, and we have obviously a deep connection to it, even if we're very more and more kind of a part of it and remote from that. And I think every time I do landscapes, and I obviously love doing them because they have it's kind of great possibilities of all different kind of I will get kind of like visual strategies and composition. It's like an endless kind of a playbook. With a face, it's kind of like, you know, I mean, of course you can do 10 eyes, but it's a bit more reduced. With a landscape, you can, you know, that's a lot. That's also a lot of why artists have been painting a lot of trees, because it's, you know, it's, you can.
Don't say that to David Almech. He's not agree with you.
Yeah, that's
Everything
true,
with the face. Is it not
yeah,
true?
true.
Yeah.
Or Picasso, yeah, he play a lot with the thing, but still, you kind of have to. But yeah, I think that's one of the reason. And again, I'm trying to create that space that is really like kind of the arcadic, kind of like, yeah, the kind of paradise idea, like, or like there's you know, like the description of the paradise. I always been like this, basically the world before, so the nature, you know, like in paintings, it's like it's a place with trees and animals, and basically humans are coming back, but without all the thing they did for like I think it describes like a lot of the extremely complex and I think obviously extremely urgent or present kind of ideas of the relationship that we have with what we call nature, what we call landscape, and trees. Like I've seen that, like obviously we have trees became like in the last like decades, like one of the symbols of the our relationship with the planet. Like for a long time, trees and forests were something that during the medieval and after, like, was something that was scary and bad. It was just like, it was going in the forest was dangerous, and basically cutting trees and getting rid of the forest was the goal. It was like, and now, like, obviously we exactly on the opposite spectrum, like preserving forest and glorifying the forest is what we do now, like, because we kind of almost destroyed all of them more or less as they were in the original habitat. So again, it's to explore this really I think fascinating relationship that we have with this outside world, or like this.
But when you're talking about paradise, what's paradise? Is it another place out of the world, or is it childhood? Is it the dream when we are sleeping? Is it that to be back to paradise, or is it a dream to come back to the childhood? What's paradise? What does it mean for you?
Well, it's all those places. I guess it's a place that doesn't exist, and that you create in your mind and you can go there and feel, oh, that place is. And I think that's what I find it interesting. Like, usually humans, when they think about a perfect place, they never think about a city. They think about nature. They're like, that's our ideal. But obviously, it's a paradise. It's a forest without any mosquitoes, a forest without any, like, actually wildlife. You don't want to have too many bears probably, and too many wolves. So it's like, it's our relationship with this idea, like, somehow we love nature and we think it's the best place, it's the best thing in the world, but also we don't like it. We always wanted to kind of control it. Even, I mean, I think that's again the relationship. We want to preserve it, like, so putting bears back, but controlling how many there are, and like we have this very strange, I guess, relationship. And paradise is exactly that. It's kind of basically illustrates how humans have been usually kind of describing how nature they want. Basically, they want nature to be exactly as they want to. Like nice trees. Maybe Switzerland is a good example of that. That's they kind of succeeded to that. It's almost like manicure. It's like, oh, we're gonna put a tree here. No bears anymore.
Clean.
Clean, very clean. They clean the forest all the time. They're very well cleaned.
I was just taking a look on the book, and I had the feeling that each images from you are like a fragment of a large narrative. And that was really funny, because just before the talk, I was showing you something. I will show it to our friends. It's a book for kids. It's the work of Elmer from David McKee. This is the book. And I will try to show, just focus on the image. And you see, Elmer is the elephant, the colored elephant. And this is the jungle for him. And he's walking with his cousin. And the cousin is Walter, and he's black and white.
Yeah, that's great.
Talk about black and white. And I had the feeling when I was reading that to a kid, I had the feeling to be like the elephant with your works. I'm in a strange area, and the difference between your works and these works is bringing a narrative, and we have to create a narrative with you. Is it true? There are links between all the images together. It's your imagination, and we have to build a kind of narrative, like for the child book, like this one, a really good one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yes, it's really interesting and really funny, because you are also with the question of the paradise, the nature, the time you have to take. Everybody is hurry, and the nature is there. It's most magnificent spectacle that you could see. And it's a show, a permanent show with color and light. But what's the narrative of Nicolas Party? What's the meaning of the narrative? I think that Magritte was playing with language. He's showing you that language is the portrayal of the images.
But like in Magritte also, like, when if all of his painting, there's also a narrative there that you can create.
We are not talking about Magritte, we are talking about you. What's your narrative?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I think when you create an image, a painting, like, let's say, in the tradition of what's been like guess lately a painting, is like, you don't want to describe the narrative with words. So basically, you want to create a narrative, or you want to create something. There's obviously a scene. When you do anyway figurative, you can avoid it. If you put a teapot and 3 birds on top of it, of course there's a story there. There's no but the story, like, is, you don't really control the story if you don't tell the story yourself. So basically, like if I now I was like I could tell a story probably, but it will probably change like in 2 weeks or whatever. And I think that's what is usually a painting. You know, before there was like obviously most of the painting will start from an actual story, like mostly kind of biblical stories, and they will like illustrate that story, and then it switched to you know, a lot of the mythology was similar, and then it switched to like having a picture with no story. You're like, oh, there's no, the story is just in the picture, and there's, you know, there's more or less no real clear connection to an actual narrative. And I think that's what I'm doing when I'm trying to, I think, have a very simple story. Like, well, I think what I'm trying is, if I'm trying to do, it's like to create an interaction between a few elements in the paintings, but sometimes there's only one element. If it's like a landscape, I would say just a space, but sometimes trees have definitely some kind of characters, and they're like playing with each other. But like, let's say the cave that I've been doing lately, there will be like almost no, it's just like a space, and the narrative will be between you and the I guess the space itself. But sometimes with the yeah, again, I'm trying to put, it's like, you know, having like different actors, I guess, like on the stage, and they have a costume, and they have a kind of yeah, characteristic, but they don't really have a scenario. They're just there on stage, and then you you put them there, and I guess they do whatever they do. But I don't basically, I'm not like the director that tell them what to do. I just put them on the stage, and I'm putting them very carefully at different places. Then they're right there, and then when you come, let's see what they do. I don't know. I like seeing them, and sometimes I do the because I do that with other paintings more than with my own painting, because your own painting, you spend so much time with them. I mean, that's obviously the thing that I look the most in my life. It's my own thing, because you all day long with it. So like, and it's I'm in a different moment with them. So when they're done, I look at them, but in a different way. I think every time I look at a painting that I've done, it's more like I remember when I've done it. There's an echo with it's, but I do this exercise of the stage thing with other people paintings.
And could you forget this moment and to see your own works, like works from another artist that you could discover with your own a different narrative?
No, I don't think so.
Still focus on what's happened between you and the work.
Yeah, it'll be difficult. I think what happens is, like, sometimes it's more like sometimes I see a painting and I think, oh, that was a good one. It was a successful one. But I totally remember. Usually the successful one, you know it exactly when you do it. There's the moment, what I was describing before, this moment is much bigger. It's like, feels like, because sometimes it happens, but it's very small, and it's not that. It's like, okay, well, it's done, and you know it's not, it's not great, but it's fine, and you pass to the next one. And but when it happens, it's so I remember that moment. So I never like really tell the one that I think is best, because it's, I guess, my own little thing. But but I definitely have some, and I really remember the moments that happened, and it felt very good. And but this moment is very mysterious. Obviously, that's kind of, a very romantic way to put it, but it's the mystery of like this creative act. Like, you don't really know what happened, but you feel like very surprised and you feel kind of grateful that happened, because it's a good moment, and hopefully people can see it or share the same thing with it. But they can have more or less that.
And it's really funny, because we are now more or less 1 hour together, and we don't pronounce the word COVID or crisis and containment. But it's clear that, is it changing for you the way to work?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I will imagine so, but it's an art practice is a much slower pace than the what's happening in the world. It's, you don't change. Well, it depends. Every artist is different. I mean, some artists like, they use what's happening either like in the broad worlds and they fuse them in their practice, and some don't. I don't. So like, because my subjects are not really connected to a specific time. They're actually the opposite. They don't have any connection to now or the future or the past. So when I'm in them, I'm kind of similar, but different, what I'm sharing with everybody. I'm obviously having the same experience during that period. Then I mean, the same. I have the experience that I have with this particular moment, and so I think not. I mean, I will. Of course, it's changing because like I'm like whatever you see all day long change who you are. So at the end of the day, change a little bit what you're doing, but I still paint trees and sunset and caves and portrait. There's not like there's little things that they're very practical, but obviously like I had to work from home, so I worked on paper much more. But that's not really there's not like, that's just a very like, and I think it's been the case for a lot of artists. And again, like I think for a lot of artists this period has been like, I mean, it's not because there's so many, but like for people in my position, very privileged people like me, that are lucky enough to be able to make a living with an art practice. So I didn't lose my job. I could do my work from home, and so I was in a situation that was really so much easier than most of the people. So I never felt like, oh, it was never hard on me. It was not like I will not say like, oh, this situation has been really difficult, because talking to other people, obviously listen, but friends or family members, it's been so hard in a very kind of practical way. Like for me, it was never hard. It was like, ask an artist to spend like 2 weeks by himself, locked down. He will be like, yeah, sure, I love that. It's like being by yourself as an artist, like painting, it's what you do all day long. Like even like when I was going to my studio and I work with 2 people at the studio and they were not coming, I was actually happy. I was like, oh, that's good. I have my whole studio for me now. That's kind of
the same thing for a writer, yeah. It's the same thing
yeah.
again. So Nicolas, thank you so much for this time spent together. We are now at 7 o'clock in local time in Brussels. So I guess that now we maybe there are questions. So we are ready to answer, and especially you more than me, ready to answer to the question, I guess.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Michel, and thank you, Nicolas. We have a few questions from the audience. The first is coming from Gigi Krat. We're going to ask you to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself, Gigi?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Hello, Nicolas. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
Hi. I know that we are speaking together fairly soon. I just wanted to know if you had done a self-portrait of yourself, but different from the portraits that Magritte does, like a real self-portrait.
No, I never did no, I think I never did. I've thought about it, like, and I think about it very often because mainly because I love painting and art so much that I know that so many artists did it in a very interesting and powerful way, or and so on. So I was like, oh, that like it will be interesting to do the challenge. And but again, because I don't do portrait based on anything real at the moment, so I will be but saying that, like there's been some cracks in my practice a little bit lately, like because I did for the first time a painting 2 months ago from a photo that I took, which I didn't do for like 10 years or 15 years. So that was maybe this someday I hope I'll do one, like that will be interesting for sure. But at the moment, no. And I think I never did. I mean, people always say like whatever you do is kind of a self-portrait, I guess, but I don't look like that too much. But
No, not at all. Thanks, and we speak soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
The next question is coming from Kurt James. We're going to ask you to unmute yourself. Are you there? Kurt? If not, we can go to somebody else. Okay, we'll go to Jeremy Steenblick. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm on mute.
Hello.
Hi. Oh, not on mute.
Hi.
Unmute. How about that? Does that work?
Yeah.
So, hello. I was curious. In what ways does architecture play into your practice, especially in exhibitions? You know, similar to what like John Baldessari created for the Magritte show at LACMA in I think 2005 or 2006 or whatever. I've noticed in some of your exhibitions, there are arched doorways, there are checkerboard floors, there are colored walls.
Mm-hmm.
In what ways is it just about picking a complementary color that looks good with a painting, or is there another story that you're telling for the exhibitions?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I mean, basically, like the main thing with that is that it's something that you can do. It's like you can change the. I think this started with the color of the wall, and because you know there's this very strange, but I guess idea that white is this kind of neutral color that we use. So basically, like if you ask any artists that recently did the show and say, oh, so what color did you painted the wall? They will probably say like, no, I just, I left no color, I left it white. And they'll be like, well, that's a color, white, it's not non-color. And that's this, I mean, it obviously echoes with different things, but there's this very strange idea that white is not a color. White is this neutral thing that, and that's obviously not. So, and it's actually very charged in many ways. So the first thing was that it was like, well, why I need to kind of supply that this idea that everything has to be white to hang painting because it's supposedly neutral and better for the artworks. And I think like, I think very, very, I mean, of course, white wall could be good sometimes. I'm not saying never, but almost very, very often for a painting, for any object, actually, white is not the best color. And I think that's one of the things. And the same thing with architecture. Like if you do a door, if you have to do, you build a wall and you have to do an entrance, the reaction will be like, oh, just, or you can do it. And I just, I'm going to do an arch because I think the relationship was with the Fra Angelico coven in Florence. And basically there's all the cells and all of them have this, because at that time it was very common, there's all these arches, and obviously there's all those fresco, and there's an amazing work with the space that at that time painter and architect and were obviously much more interlined to create those kind of religious building and spaces. And it's just really powerful, and it's better for, I think for me, it's better for the visitors. You look at the painting better, but you look at the space better, and it makes very often makes the painting look much better. Is not the right word. You can see the painting more. It's kind of course you see it. You see it well, like on a white wall, but you see the color. Sometimes you see much better on some color wall, and then you can play to make something that it makes the painting very like. Act as a different way also, and so yeah, it's a very important like part of the practice for sure. I really love playing with the architecture and the colors and everything.
Thank you. The next question is coming from Declan Bodali. You can unmute yourself now.
Hey, thank you.
Hi.
Question comes kind of off the back of Jeremy's actually. So I managed to get hold of a poster print of Polychrome from the Modern Institute, and I haven't hung it up yet, but I was thinking, because all of the walls in my house are white, I was like, maybe make my wall bright yellow, but I'm scared. And I just wondered, I was like, do you have is your home as bold and as colorful as your exhibitions are, or is it fairly kind of pared back and you let that out through your work?
So yeah, there's no white wall where I live, but it's slightly different colors. I will like yellow, like the yellow that I use at the Modern Institute. I will probably not want to have that but in some places I could imagine for sure, like yellow walls, like maybe not this yellow. I will imagine, because I think you kind of probably like it was good for this space and maybe for a duration of like, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour in this space, maybe like staying 5 hours or like 5 years in this yellow would be maybe a little bit intense. So yeah, no, I you know, like what have been, we just painted some walls in our apartment in New York, and I choose different colors, and anyway, like the thing is, like we painted 2 rooms and it was painted and I changed straight away, and I never had an experience where I painted a show or, you know, different rooms and it worked the first time. You have to see it in real, because it's impossible to know, except for like very, well, actually not even that, but some like very muted kind of colors that are very classically used in decoration, interior design. I think they almost kind of always work. But if you want to be slightly more like challenging and like you kind of have to try on a bigger scale. And it's, I mean, I remember like we had to paint the show I did at Hauser and Verse in LA this year, and the wall we painted before I arrived for the timeline reason or whatever, and I arrived there and I was like, oh my god, it's a disaster. Like we had to repaint almost half of it, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, but that's maybe the thing. It's like white wall, if they don't work, nobody cares, because but when colors don't work, people are really like, what the fuck? And I feel it's terrible. So I guess, yeah, you just have to try it out. But I really highly encourage people to paint their walls in colors. It's much better. You'll see, you hang anything on it, you were like, wow, that's much better.
The feature wall.
Yeah.
Great,
thank you.
Now we have a question from someone who wants to remain anonymous, so I'll read it out. The question is, do you think that in making the subjects of your portraits and sculptures androgynous, you are appealing to a queer sensibility? And if so, what does that mean to you to appeal to the queer audience? For Nicolas.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because I'm not a queer person or gay person, so of course I'm not gonna like talk about, you know, that side of a sensibility. Basically, I can't say anything about that. It's the only thing that I can say is I'm attracted to that idea, and when I paint the portraits, and then how people can take it and like you know, like appreciate with all the different sensibility and difference, that I never really control it. The only thing that I control is what I want to see, and I like seeing androgenic faces. I really, that's something that I'm attracted to, and I like looking at it, and so that's what I'm trying to create in this moment when I paint it. But then again, the sensibility, the background of the person, the age of the person that look at the painting, all those things change what the person sees in it, and that I obviously can't really control. And that's kind of the idea.
Thanks. So we're going to go to Jan de Laat now. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hello. Hello. I was wondering, what kind of pastels do you use? Chalk pastels, oil pastels? When we see your paintings, the effect is so perfect. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, John. And no, I use only soft pastel. So it's a chalk pastel, and I use 3 different brands that so I use like one of the kind of really well-known and broadly kind of distributed is called Sennelier, and they're an historical kind of brand. So that's the kind of the biggest brand, I guess. And I use another one that is actually a kind of recent one called Unison. It's a British brand, and it's much more smaller kind of brand that they make like them, and kind of themselves in a small team outside of London. And the third one is this one called Rocher, and that's kind of my I mean, it's not I have a favorite one, but that's the one that I think is very fascinating, because it's a brand that is dated basically early 17th century, and then basically was basically created when pastel was having some kind of a golden age, and a lot of people were using it. And it was very popular, you know, by one of the, you know, Rosalba Carrero, one of the very famous artists at that time. And this brand was bought back from Henri Rocher in the kind of late 19th century, and it was like basically almost kind of fell apart. But at that point, he was selling pastels to the people that we know that did pastel, from Rodin to the guy. And now it's only basically his great granddaughter that has it, and there are only 2 people doing it, and they all roll their pastel outside of Paris in this little beautiful countryside place. It's really like a remarkable, you know, little place, and the quality of the pastel is really astonishing. They're really, like, I guess because they're small, they're fairly expensive, but the pigments they use and the knowledge they have is really incredible, and they have like really by far the most powerful color kind of available as I know. Maybe there's other one. If anybody knows other one, I'd like to. So that's the 3 that I use, and so far I'm happy with that. So I like, and there's like Sennelier Rocher now has 1,600 colors. So that's so they have also the biggest catalog in terms of colors. Because against pastel, you can't, maybe a little technical for me, but you can't mix color on the palettes. You know, oil painting, you don't need much colors because you can make your own color on your palette. Pastel, you don't do that, so you need to have all the colors. You know, I have a shelf with all the colors, and you choose the color, which is also, again, maybe like a very interesting aspect of working that way. Like when you paint, usually you think, or like you imagine a color and you create it in your palette. And then you kind of discover the color, how you make it. In pastel, it's more like you have a paint on kind of, you choose the color, you can see the color. Oh, I want that color, I want that color. It's not in your head, it's in front of you. So that's kind of, I think it's kind of also kind of a different way to work with colors, I think.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Next question is from Barthélemy Schaller.
Oh, I know this guy.
He's a director at the gallery.
Hi, Nicolas. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So, my question is quite easy. You had quite a lot of shows with historical artists. You know, the show with Magritte, but also group shows where you were in conversation with Degas, Cassatt, Vallotton. I was wondering, do you have any other artists where you like to do a similar project or exhibition?
I mean, yeah, a lot, obviously. But, well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of because it's like really, it's if you relax with it and you don't, like, again, compare yourself and think like, oh, like you just you do it as a playful thing, and that you don't like, also like every time you do it, like in the Magritte Museum, typically, like because I heard, oh, you were not scared, and they're like, I was like, well, you know, I'm doing that. It's only for a few months in the museum. Then they remove the painting. It's like, it's not like, because I was feeling like, oh, if people, you know, 99% of the visitors that went during the show, obviously they were not coming for seeing my painting. They're coming to see Magritte, and you don't want to be the person who's like, I don't want to see that crap here. I came to the Magritte thing. And I was like, you know, I was aware of that, but so I tried to be quite small. I tried to do like, I tried to be discreet in the museum, like, and to be kind of respectful was also the main goal of the audience. But also I was like, you know, it's not going to stay for too long. Then the museum is there, and the people can see Magritte as they are, like, so it's kind of if you take it that way, like more as a, basically you can have your favorites kind of toys, like your favorite objects, and you can play with them for a little bit. It's extremely playful, and you know, it's really a great feeling. So like if you ask me, like, from, you know, like there's this, I mean, if I have to name, like I'd love to you know, use like Jojo O'Keeffe, for example. I'd love to, because I'm a huge fan of her work. I think she's like really incredible, and I'd love to, you know, use her thing. Is and I never like really obviously did that. That will be amazing. And I mean, because I do, and that's another like brushstroke. But I love Leon Spielart, and that's something that also like, and I have some because of this stupid pandemic, and I've been missing the show in London. I guess I'm gonna miss the one now in Paris, and it's gonna, I feel like really very sad about it because it's not very often that you see a show of Léon Spilot. Maybe like he has to come in. He has to come to New York.
You could come back to Brussels to the Fransiek Museum. It's the level 8. We have a room for Spilliard.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I always go there every time I'm in Brussels. But the retrospective was, I'm sure, fabulous. Still, I guess, it's closed now probably. But anyway, yeah, that's a few. But yeah, I'm planning to do. There's few projects on the. There's one big project that will happen in 2022 that will involve a lot of other artists that I can play with, like those kind of collages and stuff. It's really like, but it's really like the pastel one was like one of the recent ones that I did with some historical artists.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba.
So we'll just do 2 more questions. We have one from Lars Friedman. You can unmute yourself now.
Hi, you hear me, correct?
Yes.
Correct? Yes. I apologize for not having my image on. It's a computer issue. I wanted to quickly, Nick, I want to thank the gallery for holding this and Nicolas for you speaking. It was a fabulous talk. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Great interview. And actually, I was thinking you're brilliant response
thank you so much.
On art history. Then quickly to get to question, mostly I wanted to, I have your medium of pastel. I had a sort of a follow-up question to the prior gentleman, but also on your time placement. But on the pastel is, why is it the use over traditional paint? And is there an issue on longevity in the life of like 100, 200 years on pastel versus paints? That one. And then you mentioned on time, there's no concept of the time within your works. It's not, I believe you said it's not past, future, or present. I think you said that while you were talking today. So it's kind of interesting. What is your conception of time within your works, that you're representing within the works, and why is that? Or what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for those 2 questions. I got to pastel 7 or 8 years ago now, and I mean I was doing a little bit of it when I was a teenager, soft pastel, but actually, because I was using oil painting and I was very, very slow with my oil painting, and it was very laborious and not very successful for in terms of the process. And when I discovered pastel, I think one of the things that I loved like directly was like basically the speed that you can achieve things were much faster and was much more intuitive. It was very playful. It took me kind of a good year, 2 years to understand a little bit of how to use the material like properly, because there I want to work on larger scale, and that took me a long time to understand how to prepare the right surfaces. I had to learn kind of a lot of technical things and also as maybe the other part of this question is about how the medium is fragile, because the medium is very fragile in the sense of it's loose on the paper, on the canvas. So basically you need to frame it, and like that part of from the studio to the framer to frame it, it's a little bit delicate, and when it's framed with the way of how we evolved with transportation and crating, it's kind of now it's totally fine. I always say, because sometimes the people reframe them or they deframe them, and that's very not a good idea. You need to have like a protocol to deframe a pastel, because you can damage it pretty quickly. But back in the days, obviously, like it was, first of all, there were the glass was a big thing. There was the size of the pastel were very often reduced to how big the glass can do. The same thing, they had to frame it. And also they were using glass that were not anti-UV, anti-reflection. And a lot of the conservators, like, they don't want to deframe any pastel, even from the 18th century, because they're afraid that when they deframe them, they're gonna like damage the work, it could be totally the case. So like, it's kind of it's more like the old pastel. I think because typically all you want, like, let's say you have a Rosalbach era pastel that's never been deframed, which is kind of rare, but it happened. And basically you will not be able to show it too often, because there's no anti-UV glass, and because it's a works on paper for her and it's pastel, it's a bit more light sensitive than paint. So maybe another part is like so they will not deframe it, but it's true that pastel is more light sensitive to than oil paint, because oil paint is obviously, the pigment is covered by oil and the different medium that makes the oil paint, so that protects the light a little bit. The problem is oil paint is the oil itself, and very often people don't varnish very often anymore, but obviously we all know what happens to a lot of the oil painting. They get cracked and yellow. With pastel, basically what you see when it's well preserved, it didn't change an inch from 300 years ago to now, if you preserve it, because there's no alteration of the chemistry. So that's kind of there's like, you know, ups and downs for all the mediums. We don't know how acrylic is going to be in 200, 300 years. We have absolutely no idea how it will maintain. We can know that basically like how we treat artworks now is so different than 200 years ago. You know, we'll like carry a pastel with horses on the, you know, like blocks of course that will damage the work. Now, like people, if a work is valuable and historically recognized as something important, people are like, you know, the pastel typically, like if you want to carry a Degas, they carry them in a special crate. It's like totally crazy. Like they really go pretty far beyond like to take care of objects. So it's kind of, but yeah, they're definitely, I said that before, but it's like the fact they're very fragile when you make them. It's one of the things that I love actually a lot about them. Like the fragility is really inherent of the medium. And the other question was the time of the how I perceive time in my work. And did you say like in for myself too, or?
Well, you had said, I believe you had said regarding one of the works, particularly landscape, that you don't envision it being either past, future, or present. I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the contemplation there? What is your thinking with the reasoning for that?
Yeah, that's something that I somehow like always end up. Yeah, I think I have a very strong kind of drawn to this idea of time and blurriness, the blurriness of past, present, and future. And I know I'm a big fan of Vertigo and like Sans Soleil. Actually, Vertigo also connected to Brussels because it was based on a very famous Belgian book, De Bruges la Mort. I think that's the name of the book. Those ideas of times come back, and I remind me of the David Hockney kind of fascination about like Chinese painting when he's saying that, you know, there's no shadows in Chinese painting. He's always going back to that because it's not supposed to be a particular, you know, shadows in an image marked, you know, it was for a long time how we actually know the hour of the day, but like, you know, marked a very specific time. And if you remove the shadows, it can be any time. And I think like, I guess art objects, they do have this capacity of as Vertigo with those characters that comes and goes in different time frame, that they travel through time in a very interesting way. Like they kind of like, they're very fluid with how they evolve. And I think that's one of the reasons that maybe like humans are so attached to what we call those artwork, those objects, because they really kind of have this capacity of transporting us through different time, and maybe reassuring for us. I don't exactly know, but I do think like it's very reassuring to feel time in that way. I mean, some people think it's very scary, but if it's very reassuring in a way, because so that's mean you're not trapped in the presence of your own moments, because usually that's what makes you very stressful. Like typically, if you're like super into the present, you're gonna freak out about what's happening in the world. You're gonna be like, oh my, you know, not saying that it's not important to freak out about what's happening in the world, but it's good also to. That was all my shows at the Michel Museum about the sunset and the sunrise, and basically this rhythm that is all around us, that is a much bigger rhythm. That will, you know, keep happening way after us, and it was happening way before us. And it's kind of a beautiful idea to think that we're here for not too long in a way, like in our lifetime, but also human beings, and it makes this kind of conception of time a little bit more like maybe playful and easy, maybe. I don't know if it's answering the question.
Great answer. Thank you. And good questions. We're going to end it there. So if Michel and Nicolas, you want to say bye to everyone, and then we will unmute the whole audience so you can say bye to our speakers. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Michel and Xavier and all of you to be here. And yeah, I mean, such an amazing project, and I'm so grateful that I've done that. And thank you so much, Michel, to have participated in this book. It's an honor to work with you. He knows that I'm a big fan of Belgian artists, and he's maybe not everybody knows, but he's one of the biggest experts in Belgian art in the early 20th century. A great connoisseur and symbolist. Wrote amazing books and amazing essays, and it's really a great honor to have my name tied to his name too. It's the
pleasure is mine, Nicolas, and I hope that we will find new subject to work together, and especially with Xavier too. So it's a family business, so it's a pleasure. Thank you everybody. Have a good night, and keep safe.
Yeah, keep safe. Bye bye.
Thank you, Nicolas. This is Lars that asked that question. Just I want to thank you for your answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicolas.
Thank you, Nicolas.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.